The sorry state of our democracy, access to voting rights in a meaningful way. That's something that some presidential candidates have talked quite a bit about, but not all of them. What would Joe Biden do in this area were he to become the nominee and eventually perhaps the president? Joining us now to break this down, Adam Eichen, author and campaigns manager for Equal Citizens. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
Glad to have you on. So this is a topic that we have talked about quite a few times. And now we have a guy who's looking like there's a good chance he might be the nominee. And so I'm trying to get caught up a bit on his record, what he might represent in this area. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, John, as you and I have talked about on the show before, is that this 2020 election cycle, for at least for the Democrats, has been historic in terms of the number of candidates presenting remarkably bold plans to fix our democracy. The most critical dilemma facing Democrats is how to unrig the system to actually allow for majority rule once again. And the Democrats have largely risen to that challenge, releasing plans tackling money in politics, gerrymandering, voting rights, with a lot of specific details about reforms that have been proven to work in states across the country. So, as far as I'm concerned, I was really optimistic about the way this primary was shaping up. Of course, the one exception to that was Joe Biden. Joe Biden has released a rather strong money in politics campaign finance plan. But on the topics of voting rights and gerrymandering, he's been remarkably silent, which is a major red flag as far as I'm concerned. He said that voting rights would be a foundation of his administration, but really the only specifics that he's given are restoring the Voting Rights Act, which is critical, but it's not enough. In one of the debates, I believe in New Hampshire, he said automatic voter registration, but he didn't really seem to know what that meant. So this is a real red flag as far as I'm concerned.
Look, and I think it's so emblematic of his approach to everything. It's, I can identify a thing that was taken away in the last 10 years. I'll give you that back. And that perhaps might be the limitation there. Now, in his plan, you talked about public financing of elections, empowering the DOJ to enforce current laws. That, I'm assuming, is not enough to get America to where it needs to be.
No, of course not. And you and I have talked about this before, that we need, really bold reforms when it comes to voting rights. I mean, you look at states across the country, Georgia, Ohio, Wisconsin, voter suppression is getting worse and worse and worse. And we need federal guidelines. We need Congress to step up in a way that, earlier, or I guess last year, the Democrats, the very first act they did was H.R. 1, the For the People Act, which was a remarkably bold piece of legislation that tackles all of these different areas of democracy. Mandates things like automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, and the list goes on. Restoration of voting rights for formerly incarcerated felons. And we just don't know where Biden stands on this. I mean, even on H.R. 1, he tweeted, in kind of celebration of the 1-year anniversary of H.R. 1's passage in the House. But if you read the tweet closely, he didn't actually commit to passing H.R. 1. So this is a major question mark. Would he support H.R. 1? And perhaps even more importantly, would he prioritize it if elected? Because most Democrats know by now that this has to be prioritized, that this has to be a day one priority in 2021 if they take back the Senate and the House. And we just don't have that commitment from Joe Biden at the moment.
For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.